Hello everyone, back at it again in my little yellow kayak. Sun's just trying to get up over those trees, can't quite make it yet. But we got a beautiful December morning here to fish. And there's a front coming in, the wind's picking up. And it's going to be pretty windy and rainy a little bit later on, but I got a window to fish in the morning. There's another fisherman out here and he went right, and so I decided to go left. And I'm fishing this shoreline here. I started out with kind of the bigger stuff, and one of those things is a little mini Ned rig. And a lot of people don't fish Ned rigs for trout, but if they're active, that bigger profile will get them, and it'll get better quality fish. The way I fish it is mostly on a slow, steady retrieve with a few pops. So, yeah, it's different than how you would fish a Ned rig for bass. I'm actually swimming it. And I usually put a little scent on there. And that's a good place to start, I think. If you're going to start somewhere, you might as well start big and then go from there. But the fish weren't too into it, so I quickly went away from that and I started working down kind of the spectrum of lures that I brought with me, going to smaller baits and lighter line just progressively as I'm working this shoreline. So I worked my way down the shoreline into this little corner where the wind was blowing in, and that can be a good strategy on some days. Seems like on some days the wind pushes bugs and bait and fish all into one corner. So it's always a good spot to try. And as long as I was going this way, I figured I would give it a shot. And it's either going to be, they're either going to be stacked there or it's going to be almost dead. And on this occasion, I was able to get one rainbow, and that was it. I fished around a little bit more, but that was the only one I could get. It was a little hard to keep positioned with the wind blowing me in. That rainbow's a little darker. He might be a holdover from the spring stocking. But I'm fishing with a little olive nymph on a tungsten jig head. And hook comes out nice and easy. I'm going to get my hand soaking wet here to show you the fish. There he goes. Yeah, so like I said, either the windy side's going to be hot or it's going to be pretty dead. And I decided to switch gears and go to the opposite end of the pond where there was some calm water, a little bit more shade. I can fish from the kayak a little bit easier, and I happened to run directly into a bug hatch. I dropped that first fish, but you can see him along shore. There's one. There's trout rising to bugs in about 2 feet of water, 2 to 3 feet, and they're stacked along shoreline. And then just a little bit further out on the break, the first break, there's more trout. And yeah, it was pretty good fishing for a while. And the bait I'm throwing, this olive Berkeley Power Nymph, it doesn't look anything like the bugs that are hatching. It just looks like something that's kind of buggy. It might look like a crawfish a little bit. It might look like a dragonfly nymph. But it doesn't look like a little black midge. And as long as you have a halfway decent presentation, so you're not throwing in 50-pound braid, something like that at the trout. I'm fishing fairly light line, 4-pound test nanofill for a main line and 4-pound leader. There he is. And they all release nice and easy with that single hook. I lost one of the little flippers on the Berkeley Power Nymph. I'm just trying to get that out of the water and squeeze my hand dry. but it was pretty much a wide open bite. As long as I could cast properly and present the bait all right, I would usually end up with a fish on the end of my line. And so the advantage here of casting to individual fish, as opposed to some other fishing methods like trolling or, I don't know, blind casting a spoon. If you were trolling, you would go right past these fish. Like I said, they're in 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet of water. They're tight to shore along with those midges. And if you're trolling, you would go right past these fish. I mean, they're dirt shallow. Similarly, if you're casting a spoon, most people aren't going to throw a spoon right up against the bank because they're going to hang up on the leaves and the sticks and whatever. They're usually throwing a spoon into deeper water and retrieving it back towards shore. And again, you're going to miss a lot of these fish. They're right up against the bank sometimes this time of year. Now, I'm a little lucky in this situation because it's a little warmer. We got a front coming in. There he goes. And so they're a little bit fired up. I have an easier time of it today than some other trips because of the weather, because of the warmer temperatures, because of the front coming through. And the fish seem to, react to that sort of stuff. The barometric pressure is dropping. And yeah, they're pretty fired up right now. And so I could throw a bunch of stuff at them in that soft plastic category, not necessarily a Berkeley Power Nymph. I could throw a tube at them. I could throw a bunch of stuff at them and really expect to catch a bunch of fish. And that's just mostly because of the activity level of the fish and not really too much to do with me. Once you locate them, once you figure out there's a bug hatch going on and they're in pretty shallow water, what you actually throw at them is less and less important. You still need to fish fairly light line. This is a clear water pond. They are line shy. But 90% of the work is already done for me. I just have to get a bait in there, have a halfway decent presentation, and I'm going to catch a bunch of fish. I'm still looking around and seeing if they're more localized to one particular spot or they're kind of spread out. But I'll get dialed in a little bit. They were mostly in this corner, but really all along that bank. And I'm trying to spread out my cast a little bit and to just try to triangulate where the most fish are. I just missed a fish a couple seconds ago. But there's going to be more coming.
There he is.
Now that could have been the same fish. It could have been a different fish. They're pretty well stacked in there. And again, this is December. It's not like they just stocked this pond, this week. They stocked in the fall, and now it's properly winter. Sometimes those fish do school up and stay together for a while, but they're more or less acclimated to the pond by now. There he is. Off he goes. None the worse for wear. The only part that's really suffering right there is my left hand, because I'm using my left hand to hold the fish out of the water, and I'm getting my glove soaked in the process. If I didn't have the camera on, I really wouldn't do that. That's not a good practice. You're just going to make your hands cold. I'm getting away with it because this morning's a little warmer than the other morning. So I'm getting away with it today, and it makes maybe a little better video.
There he is. There he is.
And once you locate a bunch of them, it can be pretty fast fishing, even for December. I'm not cutting this section of the film at all. It's just, what I was actually experiencing, and it's pretty much one after the other. I mean, there's a little bit of a delay if I make a bad cast or I'm searching around trying to find new fish, but it's pretty much one after the other, and you can't match that kind of productivity doing something like trolling or some other methods. You know, by the time you reel in the fish and reset your rods and start trolling again, I'm already on my second fish. So if you haven't tried soft plastics for trout, I'd give it a try. And there are a lot of ways to catch stock trout. I'm not going to say that this is the only way. And sometimes trolling is the best way, especially if they're suspended out in the middle somewhere, mid-column. Yeah, that's going to be tough for soft plastics, because most of the time I'm fishing soft plastics either near the surface or near the bottom. And mid-column in the middle of a lake, it'd be really hard for me to dial in those fish with soft plastics, especially without electronics. It'd be like a needle in a haystack. I would probably just be dragging water all day. So in those situations, trolling will beat soft plastics. But for this situation where there's trout against the bank, I can't really think of a better way to target them. I've seen this many times at different ponds where people are trolling, and they're trolling right past the fish. They don't even realize that there are fish against the bank, or maybe they think they can't catch them, or I don't really know, but they're going right past the fish. And maybe that's okay. Maybe they catch plenty of fish and they don't care. They rather just troll all day. And that's cool. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of ways to catch fish, but this is one of my favorites. It's active. I feel like I'm more connected to the fishing rod instead of it being in a rod holder or, you know, on a stick on the bank. And it's a lot of fun. You know, for December, catching fish, it's not a bad way to spend the morning. When I first got over here, it looked like the trout were blitzing, and I thought for a minute they were blitzing on herring, but I just missed one there. And there was a fish that rose right against the bank, and I got one on. Yeah, I thought they were blitzing on herring because there were so many of them coming up at the same time. But nope, it was a bug hatch. I didn't see any herring. I think the herring have probably gone for the year. Back out to sea. They were all about the same size. Massachusetts, this pond is in Massachusetts. Massachusetts does a pretty good job of stocking trout. About 10 years ago, I might get the dates wrong, but about 10 years ago they changed the feed stock that they were feeding the trout.
Slippery.
And growth rates jumped, size jumped, and stocking all around improved tremendously. He got wrapped up as I tried to let him go, but I will fix him and let him go again. Yeah, the stocking that Massachusetts does now is much better than it was 10 years ago. I remember I used to catch trout with par markings still on them, and par markings are what is on baby trout. And they have, depending on the species, they have a different kind of like blotchy spots on their sides. Sometimes like big bars. But it just means they're sub-adult trout. And they're not really a lot of fun on a fishing rod because they're so small. They're really kind of too small to think about keep to eating. They need to grow up for another year or two and you know, not get eaten by bass or eaten by an osprey or eaten by an eagle or a great blue heron or a cormorant. And there was a bunch of them that I would catch every year with par markings on them. And since they changed to the new feed, I don't see that anymore. Almost all the fish I catch are adult trout now. And I can think of only one time where a whole bunch of 6 to 8 inch brookies got dumped into one particular pond, and I think that's just because they didn't have room in the cement runs for them anymore because they were growing so fast. But other than that, everything I've seen the last 10 years or so have been, you know, pretty good sized stock trout. In the fall, Massachusetts mostly stocks rainbow trout. I think it might be all rainbow trout. In the spring, you get browns and brookies and some tiger trout. But what I'm catching today is all rainbows. And I would guess a good portion of these are from the fall stocking. Things are slowing down a little bit for me. I'm going to try that Ned rig rod just to see if they'll go for something bigger. But most likely I'm going to have to go to something smaller. And I'll get there pretty quickly. I'll just take a few casts with this Ned rig rod, and then I'm going to shift gears and go all the way down to 2-pound test, straight mono, that's Maxima Ultra Green, and a little yellow and white tube and worm. But I just wanted to take a few casts with the Ned rig rod, see if I could get anything a little bigger. Maybe there's a brown hanging out with the rainbows. Yeah, and I should figure that out pretty quickly. If they're going to eat it, it should be almost instant. And when they don't eat it, I'm casting right into them now. When they don't eat it, that means, yeah, I definitely need to switch. So I tried to go up in size. It's not going to work out, and I'm very quickly going to reverse gears and go down in size. But I just had to try it. Sometimes curiosity gets the best of me. So I've gone to my 2-pound ultralight rig, and that's because, again, the sun's a little brighter. I've got no wind in this little sheltered pocket here. The trout are starting to get wise to me. I can still see them rising, and as long as the fish have their mouths open eating bugs, you know, they will eat something. So it's just a question of figuring out what presentation they like, and maybe what lure they like, and how light a line you need to go to get them to still bite. So anyway, I switched to the 2-pound test rig, and I was back in business. And that's a little yellow and white tube, and I put a little piece of real worm on the back of it. It's a pretty good lure that I use a lot for trout. Any of the panfish tubes will work fine. Mostly I use 2-inch tubes, and then I cut about a 1/2 inch down to you know, 1.5 inches long.
Oops.
Oop, they're slippery little devils.
Oops. Oops. Try again.
There he is.
There he is.
Nice trout. And gone. If I'm going to be releasing them, I try not to handle them too much. Just feel like it's probably a little bit better for the fish. When they stock them in coated nets. So, you know, the net itself, as long as it's a fish safe net, will be fine for them. So I fish that little tube with short hops and pauses. I fish a little bit faster when I'm in shallow water, try to keep it out of the leaves and the junk on the bottom. You can see the trout still rising by that bush there. And I'm trying not to run them over with the kayak. Every once in a while I kind of drift right on top of them. I have to back up. But yeah, they're really shallow. 2 feet. Some of them might have been as shallow as 1 foot. And they're keyed in on these little black midges. And I'm throwing a little yellow and white tube at them with a worm on the end, which doesn't look anything like a little black midge. And I got another one. Can't really horse them on 2-pound test, so I had to loosen up the drag. Usually I keep the drag a little bit tight for the hook set, and then I loosen it up once they start pulling. And I just need to be a little bit patient before I can get them in the net, because I don't want to break them off. By this point, my left hand is soaking wet, but that's all right. Luckily, it's starting to warm up. There he is. And gone. Back to eat more midges. I even rescued the little piece of earthworm there. I can use that to tip my my tube again. If fishing was slow, I'd put a fresh one on, but these fish are pretty aggressive and pretty agreeable. So I kept fishing around with the 2-pound test rig, and I picked up a few more fish. But after about 8 o'clock, things slowed way down. And to be honest, I was getting a little hungry, and I decided I'd rather go eat breakfast than keep fishing. So that's what I did. But I was very happy with the morning. This was better than I expected for December. And I was happy I made the trip out here. So that's it. I'll list everything in the video description, just like all my other videos. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. See ya!